Hi, Melissa. You can start the show now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our third Thursday mental health talk titled Don't Call Me a Snowflake. My name is Melissa Lin, representing Yana, You're Not Alone Southeast Asia Mental Health Initiative, and I'm your facilitator for tonight. But before we begin our talk, a gentle reminder to all our participants for tonight. Please ensure that your video is on and keep your microphone muted throughout the session. You may unmute yourself once the moderator prompts you to turn in speaking during the question and answer segment. Always remember that everyone can see you. Avoid any exaggerated and unnecessary movement. Please observe proper behavior and be attentive. And our last house rule for tonight, if you have any inquiries, you may send messages on our chat box and our moderator will get back to you. For those who are first-timer and unfamiliar with the National Coalition for Mental Wellbeing, I will be giving you a short introduction. We are a coalition of various non-government organizations, public institutions, companies, and individuals dedicated to champion and support the development of our national mental health and well-being. This coalition is initiated by the Rotary Club with 4 primary focus includes fighting stigma and discrimination, suicide prevention, mental and emotional wellness promotion, and youth and adolescents care. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Monesh, Vice Chairman of District Mental Health Initiative, to brief on the latest development of National Coalition of Mental Wellbeing. Dr. Monesh, stage is yours.
It's not here.
Yeah, we don't have Dr. Monesh in yet.
Yeah, Dr. Monesh is just logging in now. Facilitator, you might want to introduce further.
All right, so I would like to read to you the mission of the National Coalition Mental Wellbeing. The mission is to promote mental health initiative through education, support, and advocacy. Our vision is to support the community with better understanding of mental health, provide resources and learning opportunities for early intervention, and advocate improved support for mental health care. And our value is to create relevance in our initiative, leverage on collective capabilities, and value the dignity of others. Is Dr. Monesh with us already?
Yes, he is.
He is. Hi, Dr. Monesh, the stage is yours. So please brief us on the latest updates on the National Coalition. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Dr. Dixon. And I'm Dr. Monesh. I am also a part of the District Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives, which is a part of the team of the National Coalition of Mental Wellbeing. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Dixon here on organizing these Thursday talks. I have managed to attend most of it, I think. And I find all the topics very relatable and really informative. And I'm sure a lot of those who join us have learned a lot from all the topics that we have had on these Thursday talks. Okay, I also like to welcome all those who are here joining us for the first time. I hope everyone learns a lot, and also that you can continue attending our Thursday talks on a regular basis, right? And okay, I'll just give a brief overview of what the National Coalition of Mental Wellbeing does. All right, this National Coalition was initiated by Rotary, namely the District Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives. And the coalition consists of over 30 to 40 NGOs, various organizations, institutions, and we also have world organizations such as WHO, UN, UNHCR being a part of our team. Our partners in this coalition are, of course, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Human Resources, Ministry of Education, who work with us in all the projects that we have planned. This is a very big project, actually, that this coalition has trying to take on. And what we have done is that we have divided it into focus groups or task force. We have currently, I think, 10 task force that are being worked on. Of course, the aim of the coalition is to promote mental health initiatives through education, support, and advocacy. But that being said, our main agenda or goal will be, of course, one of the main things will be to see a reduction in the suicide rates in the country. For those who know the statistics, we know that every day in Malaysia, about 5 to 10 suicides either are attempted or people succeed in doing so. Of course, these rates, we want to see these rates come down in the next few years. And this is one of our main goals, I would say. And the other one that we are working on mainly is the decriminalization of suicide. And there's a special task force just working on this, on the area of the decriminalization of the suicide. And of course, the bigger agenda would be to see a reduction in mental health problems in the country in the coming years. So this would be, I would say, that our main goals. I'll also briefly just talk on the different focus groups or areas that we are working on. All right. One of the main ones will be the incorporation of the coalition. Now, the coalition is still very new. I think it's less than a year old. And of course, because of this MCO, we have not registered this coalition yet. There's a team led by Rotary Mohan, who they are working on getting it a registered body, a legal body. Now, they have submitted documents to the SSM, and they are awaiting, SSM has come back to them on queries on a few things, and now they're working on that. So that's one of the focus groups. And the other one is youth and adolescents. The aim of this task force of the youth and adolescents is to, what we are trying to do is give training to the school counselors. Now, we have a lot of school counselors, but only about 10% of them are actually trained. So what we are trying to do, and the numbers are big, it's about a few thousand that we have. So what we are trying to do is have a training of trainers. So we are looking to train a first batch of trainers, and we have the modules by the MMHA. And currently we have, they have submitted the documents to the Ministry of Education, because any modules or training given by anyone has to go through them, and awaiting their green light. So that's their update on the part of the youth and adolescents. That's the one part of it that they are working. There's other groups that they'll be also coming out on the support for youth and mental health. But we are taking it slow. They're going in batch by batch. All right. And the other one, the third main one, is the psychosocial support and group training. I'm the one who's leading this task force. Of course, we have a few areas that we are looking at. One of it is a module of training on mental health first aid for the frontliners, namely the police, the bomba, and even caregivers and parent support group. So there's a team working on that. We are trying to get modules from the WHO. The Ministry of Health has actually come and given us some of the modules that they have. So we are trying to see how we can adapt this to our country and come up with modules for this group of people. What I'm actually working on is training for primary care doctors, namely the GPs in the country. I'm a GP, and I see a lot of patients. Every day I see about 40 to 50 patients, and I can say a bulk of them, when we actually question, there is some form of mental health problems that we see, which has not come to the serious point of depression, but if not, something is not done early, it will lead to that at some point. So what we want to see, and a lot of doctors, actually during our residency, we don't learn much on mental health. So even me as a GP, we see them, but sometimes we lack knowledge on what should we do next, where do we refer them to. And so we are coming up with modules. We have actually come up with a survey first to be sent to all doctors, GPs in the country. And we are working with the Malaysian Medical Association. We have sent it to them, a survey about 10 questions, asking them how comfortable are them treating mental health illness, how comfortable are they in recognizing the symptoms of different forms of mental health problems. And now I think we are awaiting MMA to disseminate this survey to all the GPs in the country. So that is the updates on that. And the mental health at workplace, I haven't got the updates yet. I think the chairman of that, Rajiv, is here. Probably he can give us some updates later on this. And the other main groups are the decriminalization. Now, I just spoke to Mohan. Mohan is also in the task force as a committee member in the decriminalization of suicide. Now, this, what they are coming up with, they are coming up with a press release soon. They have come up with the documents. And this press release will be released, I think, in the next week or two. It's being vetted now before it is released. And the group that is working on this is the AG's chambers. A few of prominent lawyers are also in this group, and they are coming up with papers on that. And of course, there's also a group which deals with the funding, because this project is going to cost us a lot of money. So the funding group is by the Rotary and other organizations. So they will work on the funding part. And we also have the ICT led by Dr. Dixon. And I'm sure Dr. Dixon is, they are doing a lot. I think they are the most active task force currently. They're coming up with these webinars, coming up with the virtual platforms and to tackle mental health problems. And the other area that that focus group is on stigma and decriminalization. They are coming up with awareness programs and strategies to reduce stigma in the country. Now, this, I don't want to take a lot of time. I think we have about 3 to 5 minutes to speak. So this is mainly what we are currently doing. As you can see, there are a lot of organizations with us now. Of course, the main aim was that everyone was doing work by themselves previously. So the main aim of the coalition is to get everyone, and instead of reinventing the wheel, why not all join forces and see where we can, do our work, our part in it. Yeah, that's all. I think I will pass back to Dr. Dixon, I think, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Monesh, for the updates. And before I introduce to you guys who our moderator for tonight, I would like to check on our crowd for tonight with a simple poll. May I have the first poll for tonight up? I'm going to give you all 1 minute to answer the poll. So let's have the poll up. First poll. And once you're done with the poll, give me a thumbs up. Can I see more thumbs up? I would say this question is pretty interesting, as I came out with it thinking about the youth, and these are lines that I've heard while doing my society work from most of the people that I've worked with. They have encountered all of these lines before. So do let me know what are the lines that you may have encountered during your work with people that has mental health illness. Right? Everyone done? Can I see more thumbs up? All right. I see some thumbs up. Thank you so much for giving me the thumbs up. All right, now I'd like to introduce to you our moderator for tonight. Such a long profile from such an amazing person, for sure. So we have Mr. Terence Hugo Tan. He's a Malaysian social authority trainer, educator, and entrepreneur. As an avid community builder, Hugo is instrumental in the growth of various organizations such as InvestTalks, Math, and One ASEAN. As a certified NLP, life coach, and HRDF trainer, Hugo has trained professionals and key opinion leaders across Southeast Asia to become better leaders, public speaker, and networker. For his service and social projects in Rotary for the past 8 years, Hugo was named the Outstanding Rotary of the Year 2019 and 2020. Hugo is recently nominated as the District Rotary Representative for Rotary Year 2022 and 2023. Hugo has been featured on various media and publications such as Property Queen, TEDx, The Star, Astro Awani, Century Daily, Malaysia Today, and many more. And now I'd like to invite Mrs. Terence Hugo Tan on stage today.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, Mel. And glad to see all of you here this evening. I mean, it's always a blessing to see all of you gather for such an important cause. I mean, it's 8 p.m. Many of you could be having your dinner, spending time with your family, but all of you are here today, this evening, because for a cause that matters. Just now, I've been seeing the poll results, right? As you can see, many of you over here, you are either a youth, or you are a parent to a youth, or you're working in a line where you are dealing with youth and adolescents daily. You could be a teacher, you could be a social worker, you could be employing youth in your workplaces. And that's the reason why we are here today, isn't it so? Because today is 18th of March, is the first anniversary of our movement control order for fellow Malaysians, right? I just read this on Facebook a couple of minutes ago. And so much has changed in a year. And in fact, perhaps the most important thing is that how mental health has come to the forefront. You know, we have this invisible pandemic, all this while without us recognizing it or taking sufficient action to actually rectify the situation. And tonight, we have a panel of esteemed speakers that I would like to introduce to you, starting now. So first and foremost, let's put our hands together for Professor Dr. Philip Josh. Dr. Philip is a consultant psychiatrist and addiction specialist. He's currently the head of psychiatry in IMU. He's also an honorary consultant psychiatrist at Hospital Tuanku Jaffa, a visiting consulting psychiatrist at Assunta Hospital and Mind Faculty. A little bit of fun facts about the background of Dr. Philip Josh would be that he has actually served in the drug and alcohol unit of Canberra Hospital in Australia and as a psychiatrist in Refugee Center in the Republic of Nauru from 2016 to 2019. A very accomplished consulting psychiatrist. Put your hands together for Dr. Philip Josh. Okay, next up, facilitator. We also have with us today Sharada Segarant, a double degree student currently pursuing her bachelor's in medicine, surgery, and also medical science, the co-founder of Mind Matters Club Network, which we will introduce to you shortly. And of course, the recipient of Queen's Guide Award and the 2 times National Public Speaking Champion. Recently, she has also been serving as a panelist at Girl Force, Unscripted, Unstoppable Forum, alongside Hannah Yeo. Please put your hands together, give her a thumbs up, Sharada Segarant. Okay, next up, we have our brother here, Mrs. Salah Hardin Podell, a final year psychology student at Help University, formerly the chief assistant editor of the Psychronicle, an event coordinator of My Mind on Film, Malaysia's first youth mental health film festival. Some of the videos that you have seen when you're waiting to be admitted, right? And currently he's the research assistant at the Center for Mental Health and Wellbeing. His research being the relationship between liberal perspective and self-harming behavior. And finally, our final panelist for today would be facilitator. Next up, we will have Lee Yvonne, graduate tutor at Help University, core lead coordinator for My Mind on Film, with a thesis on the relationship between the COVID-19 pandemic and our mental well-being. With this, let's put our hands together and cheer for our panel of speakers. And for the tag team, I would like to first bring on stage Dr. Philip Josh and Sharada Segarant. Welcome, Dr. Philip. Good to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. And Sharada, Good to finally see you on screen again. And so, so for all of you who are watching this, right, if you have any questions for our panel over here, feel free to always type in the chat box, right? So before we begin, right, just for the sake for our panelists today, they would love to understand you a bit more, right? Over 100 of you, I think up to 250 of you have signed up today. Okay, if you are a parent, I repeat, if you are a parent, comment 1 in the chat box. Let our panelists know. If you are a parent, comment the number 1 in the chat box. Vigyak Sridevi, Dr. Vinogiri, Suran, DG and Dr. Krishna, Corinne, welcome, welcome. So Yin. We need to have a feel of how many of our parents that are with us today. Definitely you have very fortunate children with the parents committing for such a webinar, right? You know, at the beginning when we have this, people are thinking like, is this webinar, you know, just for young people? Definitely not. Because what happens to young people, you know, affect us as parents, affect us as educators, affect us as lawmakers. Timothy, Roger Gopal, welcome. Okay. How many of you in your line of work deals with youth or adolescents? Comment 2. Comment 2 if your line of work requires you to frequently work with, deal with youth or adolescents. Dr. Philip Josh, first, definitely. Chin Chen, Raj Kumar, welcome. Jia Yun, welcome. Alka, welcome, welcome. Okay, lastly, how many of you are actually youth or adolescents yourself? Comment 3. Comment 3 if you are a youth or adolescents yourself. Because I'm aware a lot of Interact clubs, Rotary clubs, and even psychology university clubs are with us today. Amanda, Jennifer, Brittany, Joshua, welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so without further ado, Dr. Philip, our first question for you today is to set the stage, right? Because maybe you're not aware, but a lot of people have a hard time differentiating what are youth and what are adolescents. So the first question for tonight would be for Dr. Philip. How do we define youth and adolescents? What age group and demographics are we looking at?
Well, it depends where you look for the definition, but essentially adolescence is a transitional phase. It's a transitional phase of growth and development between childhood and adulthood. So it usually starts from puberty and then goes on to adulthood. By WHO's definition, young people are referred to individuals aged between 10 to 24. But there are many other different definitions, and it can also include, you know, when you're a child and dependent to when you become independent. And that can then raise the age because a lot of children are still staying with their parents, doing their undergraduate and postgraduate degrees and not really being completely independent. So adolescence and youth is now protracted to a longer period than it used to be.
Awesome, awesome. And that's very true. In fact, the definition of what youth or belia is for fellow Malaysians, right? It really differs from country to country, right? Recently, we have read the news of how there's an effort to reduce the age of youth in Malaysia to the maximum cap at 35, right? So it has been very fluid, and in most countries, it's not even above 30. So this is the demographic we are dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. If you are watching here tonight, this is the age group we are looking at. So one of the main questions when people see the poster is that youth mental health. I mean, we started with a very general topics like suicide, mental well-being in general. But today we are interested in what are the kind of challenges that are both Sharada and Dr. Philip, you feel that youth had it a bit harder or it is more prevalent among youth and adolescents? Sharada, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. Start.
What kind of mental health challenges? Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think mainly one of it that everyone experiences is the lack of awareness. The thing is, they do not know when they need to ask for help and how they actually have to go about doing this. Many people actually battle with anxiety and depression for years without actually understanding the root cause of their sudden mood change or their lack of motivation. or just feeling generally not well. But by the time they actually acknowledge that something is actually wrong and they go and seek for help, which is further on when in their adult days, you realize that the problem has already progressed to a very much later stage, which initially, if it was just anxiety or it was just depression, it could have been stopped at a much earlier stage, but in some cases, it actually sadly progresses until suicide. I know it's an extreme example, but we're not playing around here. You know, when we give perspectives and show where we are actually standing right now with the mental health issues in Malaysia, many people feel at the beginning that it's just a phase. I'm sure many would have heard people throwing statements like, you'll grow out of it, or eventually you get a routine and you become better. Yes, it will become better, but we need the intervention at the right time by the right people. So most of the time, I feel that the biggest issue that youth face is actually acknowledging that problem as it is at the time that an intervention is needed. Prof, would you like to continue?
Yeah, well, I think the most common mental health disorders in youth really the ones that can be intervened and treated. They can actually be, they can actually find recovery from these conditions if they seek help and treatment at an early stage. And as Sharada says, the big challenge is for them to understand and know that this is a problem. The most prevalent disorders are actually depression and anxiety, substance use disorders, eating disorders, ADHD or attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and then even behavioral problems and some personality traits like borderline personality traits.
Okay, I think we kind of get what Sharada is trying to say, right? That all these things can be intervened, at an early stage, but we just let it build up and snowball over the years, right? Until it finally reach a very critical stage. You see, there is a very limited study by Yap and Lau, right? It's a very limited, small sample size, but it's also very alarming in that 50% of the respondents believe that the sufferer are to blame for their condition, and up to 80% believe that there is no such thing as mental health problems. Why do you think so, Dr. Philip? Why is this such a misconception?
I mean, that study itself is, evidence of the taboo, prejudice, and stigma that mental health has in developing countries like ours. In fact, there are many problems or factors that actually trigger a mental health problem. And some of them are very often, or at least most of them, are not in the control of the person who is a sufferer. Things like genetics. You can't blame a person with a mental health problem for the genes that they're carrying. Or poor parenting skills. Who do you blame for that? If the parents don't take responsibility and say, I need to build my skills in bringing up my child in a way that they are resilient and protected from developing a mental health problem. And schools that don't emphasize mental health, who do you blame for that as well? So I think it's, it's callous and irresponsible to blame everything on one, that the individual who has the problem is the one to blame, because we know there are multiple factors. And we need to, identify these factors, but also identify this person as someone who needs help and can recover from their problem.
Definitely. I think a lot of people, Prof, they don't understand the factors, that affect, someone's mental health. It's not all just social influences, or psychological. Sometimes it's just purely biological, and people do not dare to admit to it, right? And if you look at the poll just now, many of you have said that people have told you to just let it go. Or if you look at the name of our talk today, don't call me a snowflake. Some people ask me, right, Hugo, like why snowflake? The reason is because if you just do a simple Google search, right, you will see how people perceive youth of today. We are talking about the millennials, we are talking about the Gen Z. They are telling them that these are strawberry generation. They are a tofu generation. They are snowflakes. They are weak. They are not as tough as before, So they are complaining over little stuff that we had it harder. As a youth yourself, Sharada, what do you have to say to that? What are the most hurtful things you have heard yourself?
I think the conversation here is actually not about which generation had it tougher. It's not a competition of who has had it tougher and has gone through and survived. Each generation has their own challenges and the own things that they have dealt with. What they would have dealt with at that time is undeniably their challenge at that time. But this generation faced a different kind of pressure from the society to say. Social media would be the best example of the current pressure that our generation faces, which was probably not felt by the other generations. The need to have everything picture perfect is actually a craze that has gone around in this generation. Everyone wants to have the perfect life. They want to portray their best on social media. But what everyone doesn't seem to get is that when everyone posts on social media, they're not just posting their journey. It's their best. It's their best moments, their best picture. Out of 100 pictures in the gallery, you're only looking at that one picture. So the blind spot is not actually being seen by the rest. And while this might not seem like a great issue to the older generation, this has actually caused so much pressure. And in fact, it's one of the leading causes of depression and anxiety among today's generation. So I feel that there is no use in comparing and telling that they had it tougher or we had it tougher. At the end of the day, we're trying to solve the issue, which is mental health. And mental health these days has got so much awareness that people are creating. People are now able to recognize the symptoms. They know what is actually wrong. So in my opinion, I feel that most cases in the older generation probably were not actually diagnosed. So it's not to say that this generation is suddenly coming up with so many mental health diseases. It's just that in this generation, we are able to acknowledge the disease and we are actually looking for interventions and treatments to solve the problem. So in my opinion, I feel that right now we're actually solving the problem. So then as the numbers come up, sometimes it's a good thing. More people are actually stepping up and they're actually acknowledging about this issue, that it's actually a problem and something is being done about that. What do you think, Prof?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think you're completely right in saying that perhaps awareness is more, and so now we're picking up these problems much more than we used to before. We know there is a huge body-mind link. So if you don't look after your mental health, you are at risk of now developing diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and cancer, and the numerous other chronic medical conditions. Now, just because parents or the older generation think I never had a mental health problem, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, because it can portray itself in a different way when they get a little older and they're suffering from some other medical problem. So, I think awareness is important and acceptance. The other is expectations, as you mentioned. It's not just social media alone, but sometimes it's from families. When the child is brought to see their grandparents and, dad says, look, grandma will give you the best advice possible. And all grandma says is you got to be the top of your class. And you're average. And you're trying your best to cope with that. Of course, your parents don't tell you you have to be the top of the class, but somebody has already instilled this in you. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the immediate family. It can be messages from, the community as well. So, yeah, I think there are many different factors that are making it harder for people to actually deal with issues that are becoming more common as well. But the other thing is also we're focused too much on the grades and not on the EQ. And the IQ is the most important in most families. It becomes the basis of identifying a person's worth and not how they fit in with the community and with themselves. I think that's a real big loss. And I feel that schools and others should be involved in actually developing that EQ part.
Definitely. I think Dr. Philip actually raised an important point, the importance of EQ. So much has been said about IQ, about your grades, how competent you are at your compared to your peers, right? And I love what Sharada has mentioned about social media, right? When you post a picture, people post their best. No one posts their worst. And what is more shocking is that if we look at what has happened in the, not too long ago, let's say what happens within these 3 months, right? So we have a girl that did a makeup, like live stream, just like this, did a makeup live stream. And people were basically cyberbullying her because saying she's not pretty, so on and so forth. And recently there is another social media influencer that she kind of fumbled when she played the piano during a live stream, just like this, right? I mean, there is no filter. I mean, if you're, sometimes we panic and stuff like that, right? So she's a classical pianist and she's unable to play a piece properly, right? And it actually affected her so much that she stormed out of the live stream. And she actually recently posted another photo of her actually trying to hang herself, you know, because of that. So what happens in this generation is that every tiny little thing has been magnified because our lives are basically public. There's no privacy. Everything is on Facebook, Instagram. I can know when it's your birthday, who is your family, you know, what is our wins and losses. Which leads us to these statistics that we posted in Facebook recently, right, by U Government. It's actually quite recent. It's a 2019 study. It says that 26% of those surveyed, you know, we are talking about youth over here, admitted to having experimented with self-harm. So we are talking about 26% of the respondents actually have tried to harm him or herself before, right? And it's also not exactly shocking because I have friends around me, doesn't matter whether it's this guy or lady, you know, they have all experimented with self-harm, you know, in one way or another, which is very odd. So what do you have to say for that, Dr. Philip? What is it that triggers someone to basically harm him or herself?
It's something that I commonly see in my practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's when people reach a dead end, trying to find support and help for themselves, and they can't cope. And that's when they think about self-harm. But it's because they also lack some of the skills that are required when you make the transition as a child to an adult. And these skills are not, you know, on a textbook or actually not taught in books and, you know, taught in schools. And unfortunately, they should be the purview of most parents, but most parents are quite busy. And so, you know, they're left on their own devices. Some turn to their peers, some turn to social media to look for how do you cope with these things. Now, if you look at social media, there are millions of sites teaching you how to self-cut and self-harm and suicide. But there are only about a few thousands that actually teach you how to prevent suicide. So, you know, the reliance on, you know, for help, I think should change. And that should start with the family unit. That should start with the community. That should start with schools. That should start with acknowledging and understanding that children moving from, you know, being dependent to being independent, it's the most stressful period of their lives. And how much we actually invest in building their stress skills will determine how they cope with that whole transition and that period of change.
Very poignant point by Dr. Philip, because it's definitely a transitional stage, you know, for many adolescents and youth. You know, they are getting into new environments, you know, away from their parents, into new social groups and into the workplaces. And truth be told, you know, one thing I realized is that in schools, right, I think, let's say, you know, like 10, 15 years ago, I never quite realized there's any component of mental health education. If you think about this, right, there has been something called PE. There is a physical education component, and we are supposed to learn about history, about physics. But how about our mental and emotional well-being? Where is that component? Where's that subject? Where's that module? You know, it's very surprising. When you just think back, right? I've never learned this in primary, in kindergarten, in secondary, in high school, in university. It just doesn't exist. And I would like to take some of the questions from our viewers here. For those of you who are watching on Facebook or Zoom, as you are watching right now, do know that I see your question. I see them. And right now, I'm going to pick some of you for our panels to answer. So question number one would be, this is by email. I got to pick yours first, right? You're very dedicated to email us. You have a family member who during MCO had a big quarrel with her siblings. After this, she stayed to herself. She sleeps the whole day. She closed out herself from communication, doesn't even wake up for work. Is this a sign of depression? How do we diagnose this, Dr. Philip?
Yeah, I mean, typically in depression, most people can have reclusive sort of approach. They become, sort of socially isolated and avoid others, and sort of become inward looking. I think the important thing is for people who are close to her to allow her to know that they are available, that they're there for her if she needs. To also give her self-help, sort of lines or, contacts that she can utilize. There's, in this day of the World Wide Web, there's so many different sites that are helpful and useful for people who have mental health problems. There are even apps that people can download to help themselves to, get better as well. Of course, they need to be the legit ones, the ones that we recommend and suggest. So ones from the universities and from and national NGOs would be very beneficial for her to understand her condition and a problem. There are questionnaires that actually can help people understand themselves and then know where to look for help. So we have actually lists of places that people can seek help for their mental health problems that are provided with the Malaysian Mental Health Association website, the Malaysian Psychiatric Association website. So there's many different areas that can support this as well. I think importantly, the sooner she's told that she is being supported, that people are available and they can even accompany her to see someone for help, the better it is for her to understand and be able to feel the to be able to look for the help that she requires as well.
Definitely, I think as family members, as friends, we should always be aware of the behavioral changes of the people that we care about, and okay, I would like to follow with another question. I think this is possibly a different multi-generational behavior. So from Kanagas, right? Kanagas came across families where their young adults are constantly locked up in their rooms. They don't really interact much with their family, only coming home for lunch and dinner. Is this a sign of depression? Okay, this is an interesting one. What do you say, Dr. Philip?
Well, I think we shouldn't jump to conclusions here. I mean, this transition period is also trying to be independent.
Mm-hmm.
And, from being all the time with the parents and completely dependent on them and, all the cuddly hugs and everything else, children, when they become youth, want to be more on their own and independent and have their own peers. And so that could be them trying to find their space. But it's important to maybe have some, house rules. We have meals together, we do this together, we, maybe have watch a movie or show together. We have our family time. And one of the best ways for parents to actually build that relationship as children are growing is to actually engage in activities that both sides enjoy. And exercise is a very good example. So if you're going, exercising together that you started since, you had, when they were a child, it becomes a routine. It becomes, something that, naturally occurs regularly. And during exercise together with families, you can actually open up and talk, because that's the best time when you can actually communicate with your children, with their next generation as well.
Definitely some very handy tips over there by Dr. Philip. Basically, you need to have some sort of family rituals that all of you do together, especially something that is of common interest and is also healthy, like sports. Definitely set aside some time, a safe space for them to confide in you. So before we proceed further, right, with questions on youth, I would like to bring on two more youth. So love the tech side support to bring on Yvonne and Salah to the panel. Welcome, Yvonne.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's wait for Salah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us today.
Welcome, Salah.
Yeah,
I
sure.
spotted Dr. Nagia in the audience. It has been a couple of years, Dr. Nagia. Good to have you here with us. Okay, so let's just proceed here. So we have some questions on youth, right? So first and foremost, the question I would like to ask is, where do youth seek help, right? Just now there's a question in the chat box, right, by Ling Eng Hui, right? Okay, the question is, why is it that when youth requires help, they do not go to the school counselors or teachers? Why do they feel more comfortable confiding in their peers or even posting, all this? If you are aware, every university have some sort of confession forums, where they post stuff about their study challenges, their relationship heartbreaks. It seems that all these anonymous confession pages where they post stuff to seek for help online is much more popular than going to the counselor's room. Why is that so, Sharada?
One of the main reasons youth actually tend to do that is because they feel that the moment they actually have to go and meet the counselor, firstly, they are already acknowledging that there's actually a serious issue. So many try to play around the field where they know that something is wrong, but they're still in the denial stage. They're hoping it's nothing serious, something that'll just go off by time. So giving that time, during that time, if they feel they can speak to their peers about it or just post it online, where they're actually seeking help, but at the same time, they're not actually serious about it. So they're still in a joking way. So in case someone decides to help them and be like, maybe you might be having depression, or you should see a psychiatrist or a counselor, they might just laugh it off and say, no, it was just a joke, just to play it off. They're not there yet to commit themselves to something more serious. Another reason why they tend to do this is because youth tend to like the anonymity of the situation where they don't actually have to register themselves. There'll be no records. Many people are scared that in the future, that would actually come back to them in a way where 10 years from now, they're afraid that someone might look at them and bring up a problem that was there in the past. It's coming back to the stigma actually in our society, which I'm sure Yvonne and Salah would like to explain a bit more about.
Please do, Yvonne. Salah?
I think something that Shada brought up about anonymity kind of reminded me of one of the events that we held for My Mind on Film. And it's called Heart to Heart. So basically it's like a bunch of strangers gathering together and just talking. And I feel like the reason it worked so well was the fact that these are a bunch of strangers. They can spill what's in their heart and they don't have to worry about it being carried on. And I think it is really true that like with youth, the reason why they turn to the internet so much is because of how anonymous you can be and how you don't really have to be in some way responsible for what you say. Yeah, I don't know, Salah, do you want to add on anything?
Yeah, I agree with all the points. But one thing is actually is the stigma around it. And the moment, when you're talking to your peers, it's nothing serious. You can joke around and be cool. But the moment you go to a counselor and you have this label upon your shoulder that he's going to counseling, he's going to therapy, there is something wrong with him. Well, what if it's something wrong with me? But that label is actually kind of troublesome to the youth. And it actually came up when we were talking to Adolescence. We had an event, and that was actually one of the issues. They were afraid of being labeled as vulnerable and weak. So that, I believe, is like one of the very prevalent challenges when it comes to why youth or like adolescents seldom go to counseling or seek help, as in professional help like therapy or other services.
Well said, well said. The reason why I ask this question is because I know a lot of organizations and even mental health organizations that are present here today. They are very interested in how we can strengthen the counselors, how we can create peer support groups. But I think the youth need to be consulted more often on which manner that it can be done effectively. Sometimes we do good things with good intentions, but it doesn't reach the desired demographic, right? Which
so
brings
if I
us.
can add, Terence, actually, we did a survey of youth in a college nearby and identified that they had most likely better mental health literacy than adults did, than older people did. They knew what the common disorders were. They knew what the what I call disability and issues were, and what treatments were recommended for these conditions. But when they were asked what was their preference in seeking help for their own mental health problem, it was to look for something online, and never a face-to-face or somebody that may, know them, or, spread the word around, or let everyone else know. So if you have a counselor in an institution, sometimes that'd be the last person that a youth with mental health problem will go and see. Sad to say.
Indeed, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Again, when I look at the studies on the mental health situation of youth and adolescents locally, it's rather limited. But from what limited studies we have, we roughly know there are about, say, 400 to 500,000 youth and adolescents that are actually have some form of mental illness in Malaysia. That's a significant number, where 1 out of 5 of them reported they are depressed, 2 out of 5 reported they are anxious, right? And 1 out of 10 reported they are definitely stressed out, and 1 out of 6 reported they are victims of bullying. So the numbers are there, and it's a staggering number, yet, we have a lot of information campaigns, we have celebrities, nice posters, nice slogan, but it's a question of how to reach out to youth. And I'm actually reading a lot of your chat box over here, and I'm going to tackle many of them right at our Q&A section, right? And right now, I would like to ask and direct the question to our panelists over here, right, the youth panels, because both of you have actually started something to reach out to youth. Sharada, you have started Mind Matters Club together with Dr. Philip, right? And Yvonne and Salah, you have part of the Center for Mental Health and Wellbeing, where one of the projects is My Mind on Film. Okay, so I will give an opportunity for MMOF. Perhaps you would like to explain what do you hope to achieve and how is the reception on this Youth Mental Health Film Festival? Any takers, Yvonne, Salah?
All right. Okay, since Yvonne's smiling like that, it's a clue for me to to start. All right. Okay. Like a few objectives were very important to us in our mind and film. It was to recognize that mental health is actually universal, and it does include the positive. Because when you hear the word mental health, it's like, okay, it's all about disorders, it's all about like depression and anxiety. Nobody includes the positive psychology in it, which is actually like a huge part of the contemporary practical psychology that we have today. The other objective that we had was to actually initiate a conversation, which is very, very much needed, especially in Malaysia. Like, I personally believe when you don't start to converse about something, you don't have the language for it yet. Why is it so easy to discuss all these psychological matters, mental health, well-being matters in English, but not in other languages? Because all our sources are in English. People who discuss it are English people. But when it comes to other cultures, and you want to like convey a message which you've heard in a seminar or like in a gathering of English-speaking people, you can't really convey it properly in other languages. Let's say like Malay or like Chinese or Persian, just because the conversation hasn't been there. The moment you start talking about something, it builds its language gradually within the culture. So that was another aim that we've been pursuing. And last but not the least, been to battle the stigma that's around mental health here. Wherever mental health is new, especially in developing countries, third world nations, we have this stigma upon it because like it's something new. People are not yet fully educated on what it is. So the moment you go to counseling, you're labeled as like a weak, vulnerable. If a man, cries, like it's not masculine. If a girl starts, studying engineering, or things that are usually labeled as like masculine areas of studies, then like we kind of like why this, why can't you like go and be a teacher or like a nurse or so these three were actually the main objectives of My Mind on Film Festival so far.
Thank you, Salah. Of course, I'm also waiting for the cue from Tech, to play one of your award-winning mental health film. And sure. I think it's a very quick one. Dr. Dixon, is it ready? Good to go? Let's give some time for Dr. Dixon to prepare. Yeah, wow, he will alert me. So at the meantime, Sharada and Dr. Philip, would you like to share with us what is Mind Matters Club and how does one actually be part of it?
Maybe I'll go first, Sharada.
Yeah, sure, Prof.
Well, I think about 4 years ago, I came up with this idea of creating a club run by students for students. Because we've had, several different workshops, talks, and seminars discussing mental health among students. And we realized that not many of them were interested when it was us running the show or, inviting people in. And so we thought, the peers should help themselves. And that's when we created the Mind Matters Club, and it's gone and it's grown from then. In fact, we've had several short films created by the Mind Matters Club of IMU in the last 4 years. But yeah, Sharada, maybe you'd like to get in a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So to everyone who's present today, Mind Matters Club is a peer mental health group that aims to promote good mental health among students of the Educational Institute. Through collaboration with our partners such as Aflatun and a few others actually under the National Coalition, MMC is dedicated to compile a mental health toolkit, something like a comprehensive curriculum that you'd say, that utilizes new approaches to resources and supports available to students. So we've realized that over the years, every club comes up with some sort of activity. They do it, it's successful, then it's over. But the issue is that there's no lasting outcome from these events. Most of the time, it's a one-off event, and after that, there's no follow-up from it. At the end of the day, the long-term goal is not achieved because the child still does not know where to go to get help. So what we're trying to do here is to focus on creative student-led solutions and advocacy by youth, for youth, using evidence-based tools. So the modules that we are going to use are those that have already been accredited by Harvard, and they've already got approval. And we're coming up with even more activities from events that have already shown results. We are no longer going to come up with events that have not been tried at all or one-time games. Everyone knows now that mental health is an issue that needs to be addressed. What we're trying to do here is to provide an intervention. So if a child comes today with a mental health issue, we will know how much is it that the peer support group can help, how much is it when a professional needs to step in, and when is it actually the time to send the child out from the school or the institute to go and seek for help. There should no longer be a query when a child needs help, how the child should go to get the help, and how the cost should be covered. Mental health issues should become an issue just like any other health issues. If you're having heart pain or if you're having leg pain, something that people can see, it's addressed and something's being done about it, the same way and the same importance should be given to mental health. And that is what we strive to do here. We are trying to normalize it to an extent that we can speak about mental health freely. Yes, I'm going to see the counselor today. So what? There should no longer be a judgment about it. There shouldn't be oh, she's meeting the counselor. It should be like, yes, she's going to meet the counselor now. No one needs to hide to go see a counselor. That is something that we're working on and we hope to achieve. Currently, we're coming up with a pilot project. It's going to involve 12 schools and institutions for a term of 1 to 2 years. And throughout this duration, we're going to have professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists helping us from the coalition itself to make sure that whatever events that's carried out has already been accredited. At the same time, we are going to actually give youth the freedom to carry out the activity. We have realized that the best way to reach youth is through youth themselves. It's no longer going to be the professionals carrying out the activities and the youth just following or just attending the event. They are going to come up with the event. They are going to do something that they know is going to be effective and will be able to help others as well. So that's what we aim to achieve through our Mind Matters Club. And after the pilot project, hopefully we'll be able to have Mind Matters Club all over Malaysia too. Thank you.
Definitely, I think that's the ambition that we need to know, right? And I think the point of tonight is to help people understand youth and adolescents a bit better. But at the same time, to let everyone knows that a youth problem is not something that youth themselves can fully solve. It takes everyone to come together. We are all stakeholders, in our youth and adolescents. We always tell them that they are the future leaders of the nation, but we are not investing enough in them. We are not paying enough attention to them, and right now, let me share with you what is going to happen in the next 30 minutes. We are going to give you like a short preview. We are not going to play the whole video. We're going to play like a minute of the award winning by My Mind on Film. All these youth has come from, high school, colleges. They come together, for film festival with a lot of important people coming to watch them, to evaluate, so that they can send out this message, right? That's Malaysia's first youth film festival for mental health. And after that, we actually have a secret guest, right? That a youth himself that is going to share on his mental health challenges. And I know there's a lot of very pressing questions in the chat box as well. We are fully aware. And I hope the viewers on Facebook and on Zoom, when you read all those questions that is on the chat box, just remember, these are very brave people that are willing to share their questions. And there are a lot more out there that are not willing to type even in the chat box. They are not willing to voice their questions. They are suffering in silence. They could be friends around you. They could be your own child. So with this, I would like to invite Dr. Dixon to perhaps play a minute of the award-winning film. Thank you.
Hey, I've been feeling some way. I'm just gonna leave it at that about my phone and social media for some time ago, and I decided I would make a poem out of it. It starts like this. The rectangular screen of light lights up the darkness, but that isn't the only light that shines on my face. I feel not hope, not dread, but a faint sense of bleakness. Today's a new day. Another day in the rat race. The rectangular light blinks and vibrates. It beckons me. Come to me, it says. I need to tell you all the amazing things people are doing. Resist me not, for staring at me blankly shall bring you glee. The light did tell me of how productive everyone is, the successes in life, the dreams they are pursuing. People are showing how hard they are studying, how hard they are working, how much they are achieving. I bask in the light of the need to fight, to get busier and busier, although it makes me dizzier and dizzier. Some days it overwhelms me. I'll just let myself go to waste. I'll be lazy, be drowsy, with no sense of haste. I'll beat myself up afterwards, of course, with the internal dialogue in my head. You're worthless, of course. Productivity? Never in your head. So that pretty much sums up what I've been struggling with for quite some time. I think it mainly comprises of two things: upward social comparison with internet strangers and feeling excessively guilty for not working hard enough due to the hustle productivity culture constantly showcased online. I think I also had some problems with dichotomous thinking, wherein I believe that, if people on the internet my age can already afford to live independently or buy their own car, I was considered a failure because I still can't do that at that age. Thankfully, I realized that this was not a healthy way of thinking. My family and friends had given me some great advice, so shout out to them. I now spend less time on my phone, and I try to adopt a healthy mindset when I see a stranger online achieving great things, instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I still can't do that, I am a
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. I'm sure facilitator will be posting the link where you can watch the rest of the video. I think it's very commendable. A lot of video submissions, that is being submitted, just to spread the message. So before we bring in our surprise guest sharing, right? The question of the role of media in mental health, right? The role of media. You see, there is a lot of dramas and movies that portray mental health, some accurately, some not. And one of those that are being mentioned a lot because it's very popular among youth is the Netflix series, 13 Reasons Why. Right? It actually glorifies suicide. For those of you, many of you who have not watched this, personally, I've not watched it as well. But the plot point of it is that a young lady in college actually committed suicide, and she decided to leave behind clues as to why she killed herself. And the rest of the 1, 2, 3 seasons, is about the ramifications from this suicide, right? So it has been labeled by a lot of professionals as in glorifying suicide, making it trendy. There is, in fact, an organization go as far as to say that the after effect of the drama is that it actually motivates people to actually try to commit suicide. That's say, the statistics sometimes it's hard to say, like correlation doesn't really mean causation, you see. But I think the concern is there. So what do you think, Yvonne and Salah? What have you been seeing in movies and dramas that young people consume? What are some of the good portrayal? What are some of the not so good portrayal? What do you hope to see more?
Well, the example that you brought up, 13 Reasons Why, like I can't really comment on it because I might be biased towards, because my personal opinion might come in. But if I may address your question in a very general way, what do we want portrayed? Is like, well, one of the things that comes to my mind is like, we always talk about resolving issues, like this issue exists and what's the solution? Well, sometimes there are no solutions. Sometimes you want to educate the youth to build an immunity towards something that's irresistible, some things that you can't avoid in life. The reason why probably people think that this generation is a weak generation is because this is like everything that happens like nowadays is like a new experience with the gush of technological advances and everything. Like nobody had to cope with this 20 years ago, like 50 years ago. So it's new. We don't know how to cope with it, actually. It's not that we want to resolve issues here. It's the fact that we don't understand how to, in a very healthy way, cope with the challenges of today's life. So what I would say is like, the matter shouldn't be us trying to solve an issue. Some issues can be solved. Well, good, excellent. Yeah, we can tackle those. But not every issue is there for us to solve. But rather than like, there has to be a certain level of acceptance of what real life is. And I feel like the youth is struggling with understanding that side of the reality, actually, because things would happen and like, you feel so helpless and choiceless in a situation, and you say like, there has to be a way out. There has to be a way out. But sometimes it's just a matter of acceptance. Like this has happened. Well, I acknowledge that this has happened. This might not go away. So what are the ways I can immune myself, or like I can strengthen myself to coexist, with my situation? So I think if that was portrayed more in the media that we consume every day, probably we would have a better expectation of how better we want our life to get, rather than, like always looking for an answer, always looking for an escape. And many people probably like don't go to therapy because they feel like, what's the point if I go there and talk and that my problems, like not solved at the end of the day. So it's good to educate the young generation that this is not probably what we are looking for. The ultimate resolution to every issue that's out there. So that's my stand on this
to
issue.
add on or to answer the question of what film would be a good representation, I guess, of mental health, right? Those that don't vilify, I guess, mental health or mental illnesses. So movies like Split, it's so bad because it's using a mental disorder and it's trying to move the plot along. And that is exactly what we don't want. And movies that are great, I can't think of any at the moment on the top of my head, but movies that are great usually they normalize it, and it's not something that moves the plot along. That's not the main part of it. It's part of the character, and that's part of who they are. And those are what I would say are better mental health representations on film rather than ones that use it as the plot line and something to get the movie across or make it the climax, I guess, or the plot. Yeah, plot would be the better word for the entire movie. Yeah.
Very nice observation by Yvonne, right? And also by Salah. Salah as in on acceptance. Sometimes it's okay to not be okay. That's what we always say in our organization, Yana. And for Yvonne, right, it just reminded me of a quote, right, from Joker, the movie. He says something like the worst part about having a mental illness is people around you expecting you to behave as if you don't. I think that's a reality that we are facing over here. So with this, I would like to bring on our special guest, Carlson. Guest Carlson, facilitator, kindly bring him on. So Carlson has a story to share as a youth that live with it, like what Salah have said, right? Hear it from a person that actually have to live with it. Carlson, thank you for joining us today. It's very brave of you. It's a very, very commendable action. I hope your story today will inspire more to actually speak up. If there is anything that we need, is to normalize the conversation. So with this, the floor is yours, Carlson.
All right. Hello, everyone. I just realized I'm slightly underdressed. We'll attempt to move away from that now. Good evening. My name is Carlson, and I am today's guest. Just for some exposition about myself, I'm at 23 years old this year, and I'm studying at Help with Salah actually, and I'm also taking a bachelor's degree in psychology in my fourth year. My mental and emotional health has prompted me to take a few additional semesters, which is fine. And okay, so I'll be completely honest, I don't quite know where to start. So I suppose I'll start with the beginning, as most things I want to start at. Wow. The nerves just sort of hit all of a sudden. I wasn't expecting this.
We are here, brother. We are here.
Forgive my hesitation. So yes, I was originally not from here. I am in KL right now, but I used to be in Johor. My father would very frequently cross over to Singapore most every day to work, and I was in Johor. And I was in Johor for most of my life, about up until when I was 17, 18, probably. And suffice it to say that my home life wasn't exactly textbook, let's just say. I will attempt not to gloss over the details because that is the point of today, to share the reality of situations that may not be optimal for growth. This is actually really nerve-wracking. My father, bless his heart, was not the kindest of men back in the day. He has changed much, I will say for now. And I no longer condemned him as much as I did before. However, trepidation still remains. He was a source of much abuse of all kinds, mental, emotional, physical. And again, to emphasize that I have gone through much growth and understand that that was what he did was not out of complete malice, but more of the lack of understanding of what best to do. I do not blame him for his ignorance, though I do place some blame for the scars, visible or otherwise, that he has left on me over the years. Anyways, the abuse was horrific. To name a few kinds. He was pretty holistic in terms of his abuse. He touched on all three matters: mental, emotional, and physical. I realize I probably shouldn't have laughed at that. Anyways, there was no room to grow emotionally or mentally for me. And it didn't help that most of my school life was peppered with bullies, mostly bullying me because I was very desperate for attention. And excuse me. All right, details, yeah. Let's see. There were many times in my life where I was okay. Let's mulligan that. There were long periods of time in my life that has been less than happy. For a very long time, I wasn't sure what happy was. For me, happy always meant that it was an emotion to be punished. I wasn't allowed to be happy. To be happy is wrong. And so essentially, what boiled down to all of this was the diagnosis. Fast forward a few years, was the diagnosis of my when I went to therapy after a breakdown, very horrible breakdown that happened in help actually, and I was very grateful that not many people were there to witness it. I had to be physically restrained by police officers. Not a very pleasant experience, not very pleasant. There are 6 people, very heavy and able-bodied men, just pinning you down. It really made me feel like an animal, and it did not make me feel like a human at all. But I understand that it was necessary. Not to mention the scars. I experimented with in the worst of my ordeals, I have self-harmed much, and the contemplating of suicide was pretty much a constant in most of my teenage to young adult life. And after that scenario, which was about probably 4 to 5 years before now, I understood that I needed therapy or help, and therapy apparently is the best way. I feel I am most partial to therapy, and it turns out that I have I exert symptoms of, that's what my therapist likes to say, because labels aren't great. I exert symptoms of MDD, which is major depressive disorder, GAD, which is general anxiety disorder, and BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. A lot of people tend to confuse that with bipolar, understandably. And most of us know what MDD and GAD is, so I'll explain a little bit for us that might not understand what borderline is, because it's apparently not very well known. Borderline personality disorder is essentially a disorder that capitalizes on the lack of control over one's emotions, as well as having a very rocky relationship with people, having a very rocky perception of what relationships are with people, and as well as splitting, which is an all good and all bad sort of vision, which I myself suffer from still. And yeah, so I regularly struggle with the symptoms of these 3 disorders, and it's not great. It's not great wanting to die when you wake up. it's really takes the wind out of the sails of life. And not to mention the whenever I have to do something, my heart just it just I might as well have run a marathon while just sitting here right now. Actually, anxiety is tires you out. Not to mention the borderline part where I struggle daily with very extreme emotions, which I myself do not readily have control over. All that being said, that is a very short summation of my journey. I like to think I'm doing a lot better now at managing all these symptoms, as well as the emotions, have a better grasp on what I can be doing, as well as recalibrating a lot of unhealthy thought processes in my mind. And it has been an arduous journey, very, very difficult and certainly very painful. It is, I suppose it was necessary to get to the growth where I am now. But yes, that is, I suppose, for the most part, my story. So yeah.
Thank you, Carlson. I think I would like to read out some of the comments over here by Pat. It takes a lot of courage and strength to share your life with us. It takes a lot of bravery or voice for many others out there. Very brave of you to share your story. Definitely, Carlson. I think what happens to Carlson is not just unique to Carlson, but it happens to a lot of people around us. But they are suffering in silence. And I think what you did today over here, Carlson, is that you give permissions to a lot of youth and parents over here. You empower them to actually speak up on their mental health challenges. So one last thing, Carlson, what do you hope your peers or your parents or your teachers know about mental health or supporting someone going through mental health challenges? What do you think, looking back?
What do I think? Mental health has been a recent development, fortunately and unfortunately, for the world at large. I suppose, I'm not quite sure. Let me think about something I can generalize. Looking back, there were many things many people could have done. And also there are many things that many people couldn't have done that there was no solution over. So I suppose my take on the world, on the world of mental health and this would be that, I don't know, compassion. Yes, compassion. The compassion not just for yourself, to understand, or at least, if nothing else, forgive and allow yourself to struggle, to not condemn yourself for being in a bad place, as well as to have compassion for those who may struggle in the same steed, in the same predicament. The world could definitely use compassion, if nothing else. For whoever, it really doesn't matter who it's from. Even if you're not compassionate to other people, if you're compassionate to yourself, the world will definitely improve just by that. That's all I'll leave.
Thank you. I think it definitely starts with self-love and self-care. And a lot of people, might not have the kind of self-esteem needed, to really treasure and to realize that they themselves have some worth, in this world, right? Right now, I would like to take some of the questions, right? I've been getting a list of questions from facilitators over here. So I would like to read out a question by Anish Shafika. If you're still here, give us a thumbs up. So Anish actually says that there is a friend with a personal grudge. At work, she was bullied in hospital. Her friend became anxious. Facilitator, if you can repost the question, that would be great as well. Which led her to become anxious and depressed. She is also looking for answers for her friends. But when we try to help her, she shut us down. I'm not sure how to help her because she refused to see a doctor because of the traumatic event. In this kind of situation, what can I do? Should I leave her be? Dr. Philip Josh.
Muted. The decision to see a professional or a therapist is really on the shoulders of the individual who's experiencing the problem. Unless they're at a state where they may not be able to, safeguard their own safety or the safety of others. Then we have a condition in psychiatry called involuntary admission or treatment. So for those who may be at a risk of harm to themselves or to others, then we may use mental health laws to help them get the treatment that is required. Because very often with serious mental illness, there can be very poor insight or understanding about their condition. So I think the important thing is to assess that first. If the person is not in that state where they're at a risk of harm to others or themselves, then it's their own personal space and right to decide if they need or want to go for help. I think the people around them can encourage it. And sometimes it may take months, years before somebody turns around. But as long as you don't give up and provide that support and provide that reassurance that they're there, one day people do turn around and say, okay, I do need help. I'm going to shed all my fear and prejudice, and I will go and seek for it. And then you can be privy to providing that support and help. But otherwise, it's also looking at alternative sources of help. It doesn't necessarily have to be a doctor. So people with a mental health problem can see a counselor first, can see a psychologist. They can see people online now. There are AI sites online that are actually effective in providing therapy. Maybe not as good as face-to-face, but they still do a pretty good job. So there are numerous different avenues for people seeking help, and doesn't necessarily have to be a doctor or a psychiatrist at the first step.
Thank you for the prompt response, Dr. Philip. I think there's definitely a lot of pressing questions over here. For example, another one that I would like to quote. My son is at an advanced stage of depression. Kindly advise what is the appropriate course of action to take to remedy the situation. 12 years and ongoing depression. He's consuming supplements to help him manage his emotional outbursts better. Psychiatry. Yeah. Dr. Philip Josh.
Yeah, so again, it comes down to the involuntary and voluntary. So if the individual is not keen to look for treatment or help, but they're at risk of going into self-neglect and self-harm, then it may need to require an involuntary intervention. And sometimes people with involuntary intervention actually start to recover and understand their illness better. And it could be an admission, a short period of admission, and after that, with follow-ups, they understand themselves and they start then moving on to progress in themselves as well. Yeah, I think mental health in Malaysia is still a little backward in that we don't have as many private mental health services that admit people. And most of them are in general hospitals and university hospitals. And the conditions in those places may not be ideal. There are some private centers, and there are more opening up now, especially in the Klang Valley. And they have the whole gamut of resources, psychiatric trained nurses, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and everything. So the choices are improving, are getting more. I wish it could be bigger or better from before, but people with these conditions actually may benefit from short-term admission to identify and assess them and then get them into some form of recovery as well.
I actually concur with what Dr. Philip Josh has said, because again, right, another study, Malaysian study, the question is, what are the barriers that stop you from taking or seeking mental health treatment, right? And 56% of them actually reply is because they do not know where to seek help. And this is repeatedly because I think a lot of youth groups over here that's currently in our network, we have done similar, similar webinars, forums, workshops, not just in Malaysia, but in other countries as well, across the region, right? And what we realize is similar. The suffering is universal across the region. Youth are facing similar problems with no solutions, right, aside. So I would like to bring on another question for youth panels to answer, right? How do the youth explain to their parents that they are having mental health issue, especially the ones that think that mental health does not exist? So how would you speak to a parent or person of authority, that just doesn't get there is such a thing called mental health? What do you say? Floor is open. Sharada, Salah, Yvonne, Carlson.
Oh, sorry, Sharada, go first. I struggle with this myself because my parents, bless their hearts, they mean well. They just have very little understanding of what emotion means. And I feel like, I suppose the best way to approach it, I can't profess to know the best way, but what has worked for me is that to understand that they might not understand and approaching it from that angle. I suppose how would you teach a child that is just learning math? I feel like that's pretty much applicable to your parents as well, because they don't know, and we're trying to educate them on the importance of emotions and mental health. So for me, that's a work in progress, but it has worked. So yeah.
Sharada, would you like to add on what Carlson have said?
Yeah, just to add on to what Carlson has already mentioned, I think you will have to be honest with what exactly your issue is. So you need to tell clearly what you're going through and where you're coming from, and what exactly is the help or support that you need. Because at the end, any parent, for that matter, would prioritize their child's well-being before anything else. They want you to be happy. Isn't that what all parents are aiming for? So it is so much more easier if you can be direct with not just yourself, but with your parents as well. This is my issue. This is the help I need. And I need you to support me throughout this journey. That's all.
Awesome. To be upfront about it, about what you need. I think the situation over here is that people do not treat mental illness like the same kind of respect we have for physical illness. I mean, if you have a toothache, you have a fever, we can take an Emcee, we can talk about it. We can say that we are going to the clinic to get some, basic treatment. But when we tell people we have mental condition or challenges, or that we need to seek therapy, or we are going to meet the counselor, for most young people, the feeling is as if you are a weirdo, you are an outcast, you are not part of the society anymore, your friends won't play with you anymore, So I think that is a very different situation. And Dr. Philip has also posted some suggestions for online AI sites. I think we can also post and publish more of these helplines and hotlines or websites, resources on our national coalition websites, right? So for all these mental health organizations, if you are watching this, we welcome your contribution. If you have good resources, we would love to hear them. And our facilitator will post our email so that you can forward to us the link so that we can repost on our social media, right? On Facebook, on Instagram. It also matters that, youth are moving from one platform to another. So we want to stay relevant. We are currently on Facebook, on Instagram, and also on LinkedIn, right? We want to reach out to as many youth as possible. Melissa also mentioned that other than way to seek help is also the cost of therapy in Malaysia. So I would like to ask this, I mean, this question is for you, Dr. Philip, right? Is it true that to get assessment or diagnosis and to get treatment eventually, would it be very expensive for fellow Malaysians? What do you say?
Yeah, in private it is expensive, but we have a healthcare system in Malaysia that's one of the best in the world, where you can actually access mental health services in government hospitals for almost negligible amounts. It costs 5 ringgit for a visit to a psychiatrist or a psychologist in government hospitals. The only problem is the wait list and the number of people you'd have to wait for, the appointment timing. And so sometimes it leads to also short periods of consult. Yeah, but in private practice, the cost can range between 300 to 500 first visit. If you see a gastroenterologist, it'll cost you thousands because they will do other investigations. But it's covered by your medical insurance card, so you don't feel anything. But for mental health in Malaysia, surprisingly, the same companies that are from US or Australia, which cover mental health in those countries, don't cover it here. AIA covers mental health in other countries, but not in Malaysia. So it's bizarre. We've had meetings with Liam Piam and Bang Negara. But maybe we need Rotary with their big guns to come out and have those meetings. And because a lot of times when psychiatrists talk to these people, they think we are trying to be selfish and eat bigger pie or something. So the population needs to come out. In fact, in most countries, the consumer groups are the ones that direct mental health services and needs. But because there's so much stigma and prejudice, I mean, Carlson is brave enough to talk about this, but not many people in Malaysia do that. And that's a sad thing, because that huge population of mental health sufferers can change policies, can change how we actually practice.
Thank you for the sharing. I think that is actually a question on many people's mind, right? What does it really cost? How is the mental health care access, for fellow Malaysians? I think I've also been reading on the comments over here, right, where it says that a child has been taking some sleeping pills on the instigation by a classmate, but the doctor threatened and said to the child, "I can have you reported to the police for attempted suicide." So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is the kind of world that we live in. And I love what Dr. Philip has said. It's not just the effort of Rotary, but all of you, fellow stakeholders in this agenda for mental wellness. We have to all come together. We welcome your proposals, your ideas, email us. Let us know how we can work together. We can talk all night long, right? But until, there is a coordinated effort, to really, take the first step, I mean, the youth are here today. I love to see that the youth are stepping up today. We need you to play a part in this game, for your demographic. So for the others, if you are teacher, educators, mental health organizations, definitely your participation would be much appreciated. So I would like to take on one last question over here. Thank you, facilitator. Okay, so there is this issue, right, where the parents, instead of letting their child go for therapy, they bring them for, say, religious treatments, because they believe that it could be possessions by spirits, by jinn. I think this is because we are the kind of like a crossroad. We are still culturally, we are still here. We have all our different beliefs. So how should one respond to this, Dr. Philip?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a big competition. We have hospitals in Malaysia now where we have the mainstream medicine in one, building, and next to it, the TCM, traditional complementary medicine. So let's work together. I mean, we have our beliefs, we have our values and principles in our religion, and that's a very rich part of our who we are. And so, using that belief, sometimes people actually can get better combined with mainstream medication. I think if somebody has cancer and they go for chemotherapy and they incorporate religion or prayer, they might actually get a better outcome than people who just use mainstream alone. So I don't think we need to, tell them that that's not the way to go, but we need to work together. The sad thing is there are some from different complementary therapies and treatments who advise patients, don't take medication, don't see a psychiatrist. We don't tell them, don't go and see a religious healer, don't go and see a sensei. We don't tell them that, but others tell people, things that, may not be completely, evidence-based. So yeah, I think we all need to work together in this rather than compete.
Well said, well said. There is a place for every type of treatment out there.
Absolutely.
Right? So we can definitely work together and come together for it. So with this, I think we are coming to the end of our very wonderful webinar today. I hope it leaves a mark in you to know that how important mental health is, right? And what kind of challenges the youth that are around you are facing. I would like to bring back our MC for today. With this, thank you. Put your hands together for our fellow panelists here tonight. Dr. Philip George, Sharada Segaran, Yvonne Lee, Salah Hardin, and Carl Cern. Very brave, very bold sharing for tonight. So back to you, MC Mel.
Thank you so much, moderator, Mr. Hugo, and all of our speakers for tonight. I think it was truly an amazing session. I got a little bit teary when Carlson was talking about his experiences with mental health and how he's going through things. And I think every single speaker actually touched on important topics when it comes, important key points when it comes to mental health here in Malaysia. And as a youth myself that's working on mental health, I really do hope someday we could normalize conversations about mental health, and we could talk about it like it's just a normal topic, like what Sharada said earlier, like, oh, it's just counseling, it's just therapy. Or like when we watch a movie when it comes to mental health and they are actually portraying a very realistic view on mental health instead of something that is totally untrue, like what Yvonne said. So I really hope everyone enjoyed that session earlier. And now may I have the second poll asking all of you on the audience side, like, what do you guys think about tonight's session? Like, do you find it helpful? Do you think that the speakers answered your questions? And I do understand that there are some questions that we couldn't answer due to the time, but definitely we will come back for another session, or you could also engage our fellow speakers. I will make sure that our facilitators, they could actually put on the speakers' Instagram or Facebook, or you could even join our Facebook group and come to talk to us. That's the best way that we could answer all the questions. So can I have another thumbs up, or even like just put number 1 in the chat and let me know have you answered the question. Do you enjoy the session? I hope so. Definitely hope so. And now I would like to invite Ms. Kanagas to thank the speakers for tonight. Ms. Kanagas, are you here? I hope that your internet is not
yes, I'm
working now.
Here. Yes,
Ms.
it is
Kanagas?
working because I've changed my position. Okay, thank
Yes,
you. I like to take this opportunity to thank the speakers. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, to thank the speakers, Professor Dr. Philip, Sharada, Yvonne, and Salah. There's so much of information and awareness on mental health in this talk today. And mental health is real, and we all are with you. I hope today's discussion would be a help to many who are suffering in silence. I also would like to thank Carlos. He is so brilliant, and he was our special guest today for sharing his story. It takes a lot of courage and strength to come here to share his story. Carlos, I don't know what to say. You're such an inspiration to many youth here. I do hope really your road to recovery gets better day by day. Thank you so much for coming here today. And I'm so happy to see so many youth on this Zoom today. And lastly, I would like to thank our moderator, Terence. You've done a good job. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'll pass it on back to the, bye.
Thank you, Kanagas. And thank you to our panelists and Carlson. It has been a great evening. Back to you, MC Mel.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Kanagas. And now let's take a group photo. I hope that everyone is ready. Fix your hair, fix your shirt, and let's look at the camera and smile. Can I have the facilitator who is in charge for photos to take the photo session? So everyone look at the camera and let's smile. Once you're done, let me know.
Yep, it's done.
Okay, got it. On behalf of my club, I would like to ask a little favor from everyone. I'm from Yana, you're not Alone Southeast Asia Mental Health Initiative. And for all of our photo session, we always practice the okay sign, telling people that it's okay to not be okay, because we would like to normalize conversations about mental health as well. So Dr. Dixon, I'm so sorry to bother you once again. Could we get a picture with the okay sign? Thank you, everyone.
So Mahindran, ready to take the photo?
Everyone ready? Okay,
hang
fine.
on,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, got that already.
All right, thank you so much. And now could I tell everyone where to actually seek help? Could I have the slides back on? And here you go. A little bit info about this GEM helpline, everyone. This GEM helpline, the callers or the speakers the callers will be answering in different languages. So for instance, if you don't know how to speak English, or you don't know how to speak Bahasa or Mandarin, they could speak to you in different languages that you're comfortable in. So you could contact GEM helpline here for any emotional support. They are available from Monday to Fridays, and they have the operating hours over there. They also have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Can I have the next slide? And we also have Befrienders Kuala Lumpur. This is one of the, I would say, OG helplines or help centers that you could call them for if you are facing any problems. You could also send them an email as well. And can I have the last slide for tonight? And now I'd like to invite Rajiv, our next moderator, to talk on the next third Thursday talk on mental health. Rajiv, are you here?
I'm here. Okay, so greetings everyone. And so excited that all of you could attend today. I just want to give you an idea what's going to happen next month. Third Thursday, same time, we will have a new topic and something very close to our heart. It's all about COVID-19 pandemic, which we have been enduring for the last 1 year. We have picked a doctor who has been really out there as a frontliner, and he will be sharing his experiences as he went through this whole ordeal. And we also are going to spotlight another speaker who is someone who has actually been a victim of COVID-19. So the topic is about coping with anxiety, stress, and depression during the COVID-19 pandemic. I welcome you to write to our Facebook or email if you have any questions, so we could probably answer some of those questions. So that's it. Thank you very much, and good night to you. Over to Alicia.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. And I hope that everyone enjoyed today's session. And please do come back on 15 April. Make sure to register once again via our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group here. You could join and talk about mental health, or you could email us at mentalwellbeingmalaysia@gmail.com. You could join our Instagram page as well. It's the same name, National Coalition Wellbeing. Other than that, have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight's session. Thank you to our speakers, moderators, facilitators, and hope to see you the next time.